We are live. We had some technical difficulties as we do every Tuesday, every Rudy Poo Tuesday. Facebook, guys, let me tell you something. Facebook is just, they don't want a brother to succeed. Like, come on. Every single Tuesday, every single time. Stop with the technical difficulties. All it does is just make us have to wait and postpone and do other. I need your prayers. All right, but we do have a good show in store for you tonight. We do have a Ruffino's rant. I feel as if this one might be the more epic of the Ruffino's rants. Ed Orgeron was compared to a former Big Ten coach, former Big 12 coach on the Chuck Oliver show by one Baton Rouge media member. We're going to touch on that. I'm probably going to lose my absolute mind. I don't know at this point, guys. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't understand the logic. We'll talk about it. Brett Ciancia, really good friend of mine. Pick Six Previews does an absolutely amazing job covering all of college football. I'll let him promote more of what he does. The breakdowns that Brett Ciancia does, guys, there's nobody in the business, in my opinion, when it comes to an unbiased, in his opinion, an unbiased breakdown of teams. He puts a lot of info, watches a lot of film on every team in college football. And Brett Ciancia will be joining us in about 7:20. So looking forward to him. Max Johnson film study, guys. I put a little bit of it out today about Max Johnson. I've tried to explain it, but now we're going to talk about it. So I'm going to tell you where to find that and some of the stuff that LSU is exactly going to run with Max Johnson and what they're going to incorporate in this RPO game and why I believe it should be Max Johnson, because Miles Brennan can't do what Max is going to, or what Jake Peetz is going to want Max to do in the long run. And as we do every day on Tuesdays, hashtag Ask Blake. You can put it in there. You got a question, got a thought, got a comment. Put in the comments, hashtag Ask Blake, and we'll get into them. And maybe at the end, we'll get to some NBA Finals Game 6, as I do think that the Milwaukee Bucks might pull it out, but we'll see. All right, let's get to a couple of them, a couple of these comments before we get started. Ryan Thibodeau says, and we are live, that we are. Father A-Bear says, let's go, son. We missed you. Thank you very much, Father. Ryan says, these Rudy Poos on Facebook still defending Miles Brennan. I saw that. Kurt Paul says, evening. Blake Doucette says, hat backwards. Going to be some good rants tonight. Yeah, normally when I have the hat backwards, that's when you know I'm pissed off. I'm just going to tell you right now, I am pissed off. I'm going to give you a little bit on the Max Johnson film study, why I think LSU is going to more than likely and has a very good potential of winning the SEC West. We'll talk about that. But I do have to get in, I do have to talk about this Ruffino rant before we start off. So let's do this. Let's pay some bills. We'll come back. We'll tee off on this Ruffino's rant. You're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be epic. So everybody do me a favor right now. Everybody listening, do me a favor. If you're on Facebook groups, if you're on YouTube, if you're on a paid subscribe, whatever you call it, pay site, whatever, take it where you're at. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, copy the link, go there, post it, share it, because tonight is going to be epic. I've had it. So let's pay some bills and let's get after this thing. And none better than our good friends over at betonline.ag, GM Varno & Sons. GM Varno & Sons has faithfully been serving your Denham Springs and Baton Rouge area for over 62 years. With their highly trained technicians, there's absolutely nothing that they can't do. RV repair, big rig overhauls, motorhome chassis, routine maintenance, tire rotations, tire sales. No job is too big or too small over at GM. Give them a call today at 225-664-9992. That's 225-664-9992. And go see them over at 2500 Florida Boulevard in Denham Springs, Louisiana. Don't forget to mention that Blake Ruffino at AYS sent you on by. And our good friends over at betonline.ag. Guys, we are in the month of July. We have SEC Media Day. So many things are going on. Game 6 tonight in the NBA. Get those bets on your mobile device right now through betonline.ag. parlays, anything that you want. NFL MVP, if you want to go ahead and bet on that, you can do it. There's so many things that you can bet on betonline.ag. You're not limited to anything. So go in there, sign up, use your mobile device, and when you do, you'll get 50% off of that first welcome bonus. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. All right, let's get rolling. Listen, I got to mention this, and Brett Ciancia, so I got to roll quick. Brett Ciancia in about 8 minutes. If you did not see or you did not hear, so I did not see this initially. I did not see the comments. I didn't see the show. You know, we have SEC Media Days. Normally there's the Radio Row and SEC Media Days. Chuck Oliver is a guy that most people know. Chuck Oliver does a really good job. A lot of people coin him as the king of college football. I will be one of them who could say that. Been on Chuck's show multiple times. I really like Chuck Oliver. I love Dan Matthews, his producer. A lot of great guys at the Chuck Oliver show. So when I say this, this has absolutely nothing to do with Chuck Oliver. This has nothing to do with Dan Matthews, but it does have to do with one of the guests that they had on their radio show yesterday, and that's Matt Moscona. Now, let me preface this by saying, I don't think Matt Moscona is a bad dude. I don't think he's a horrible dude. I do think his takes suck, absolutely suck, and I'll tell it to his face. At this point, I'm tired of it. Like, I'm sick as hell of the Rudy Poo shit that keeps going on about what he's spewing out nationally about one coach, Ed Orgeron. So if you didn't listen to it, what Matt Moscona said on Chuck Oliver's show this past Monday is that the Title IX allegations, I am not paraphrasing. I listened to this multiple times to make sure I understood what he was saying. I am not paraphrasing again. He said on the Chuck Oliver show that the Title IX allegations against Ed Orgeron and LSU is Art Briles-esque. Let's stop right there. I understand the line of thinking to where he's going. Women were actually being raped on Baylor's campus. We don't have proof that Ed and Art Briles was covering it up. We don't have proof right now that Ed Orgeron was covering it up. I understand the lines of thinking that he's trying to go there. But then he would go on to say that this is a Joe Paterno and Penn State type of scenario here with Ed Orgeron and LSU and Title IX. So stop right there. You mean to tell me that you're going to align Ed Orgeron to Joe Paterno, who legitimately covered up child molestation and Jerry Sandusky to Ed Orgeron, when the things that we have on Ed are two things right now currently. We can't worry about what's going on in the future. We have Sharon Lewis, who did not put Ed Orgeron in the $50 million lawsuit for Title IX at LSU. We have Gloria Scott, who said she had an incident with Darius Geis at the Superdome, and that there was an exchange there. She spoke with Ed Orgeron, which we come to find out was not true. That she committed a crime, an extortion. But everyone wants to say, you know what, this is Ed Orgeron's fault. Now, the other thing that we have is a former player saying that he told Ed Orgeron about alleged rape. So you have Ed Orgeron denying it. You have the player who, by the way, has not testified or been deposed. No one has spoke with the former player about this. But you have Matt Moscona and the Rudy Poo shit going out there and saying that, oh, this is like Joe Paterno. No, it is not. Period, point blank. Period, point blank. I am sick of the bullshit. The only thing that my big ass wants to do and to come on this show and do is talk football. But we can't do that right now. And I have told you religiously on this damn show that it's going to continue from local people that go on national shows and say stuff that's not true. You want to know why LSU from a national level gets blistered? It's because of this shit. When they listen to their local radio shows and everybody that covers LSU goes on there and says Ed Orgeron reminds them of Joe Paterno. And you wonder why you're arguing with the asshat on Twitter because, well, he doesn't really know any better. He's not going to research the stuff. I am 2 shakes from a horse's ass from trying to find out a debate or something that we can do to put this shit to rest. But it's not going to stop. No matter what I do, no matter what he does, if we came together, it's not going to stop what he's going to say, and it's not going to stop what I'm going to say. We do not have proof that Ed Orgeron covered up anything. If the day comes that we have that, that will be one thing. Today we do not. And I guarantee you that nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, on Radio Row in Hoover, Alabama has the documentation that can put Ed Orgeron behind bars or fire him with cause. Blake Ruffino's the Ed Orgeron homer. No, I'm not. But what we don't understand here, what we do not understand from all of this, is if Ed Orgeron gets fired with cause, your LSU Tigers are going to go down with him. You understand that, correct? You understand that. Do I have to come out here and yell and scream and bitch and moan? I do not understand the narrative of fire Ed Orgeron. The local media has flipped on him. Just to give you an idea, they have completely flipped on Ed. You can have it again. If your opinion is that you want Ed Orgeron fired because of on-the-field stuff that happened last season, as much as I disagree with you currently, I will at least listen to that argument other than fire Ed Orgeron because of stuff that was out of his control. You got the Advocate out there posting Ed Orgeron declined to comment. Yeah, you know what, Andrea Gallo from the Advocate? You also declined to comment when your ass got sued by Jeff Landry's office. You want to bring stuff up? Let's bring stuff up. So I am not going to hold the punches anymore on this one. Give me the proof or move your ass on. Because at the end of the day, if you ain't got shit, don't say fire his ass. Because this is what happens. 2019 starts happening, right? 2019 starts happening, and all of a sudden, LSU. You better be careful when you say fire Ed for cause. This is not Art Briles. This is not Baylor. We don't even have the tip of the iceberg from what Baylor had in covering up rapes and allegations. We don't even have what Rick Paterno had at Louisville when he had legitimately on the first floor of a dormitory had strippers and they found cocaine in a dorm room. No criminal allegation or report has came out against Ed Orgeron, nor some of the players that they're alleging. All right. We got to do this. I got to get to your comments. But we do got to get to Brett Ciancia. So let's do this. I'm going to call Brett. Let's talk some football. This is what I hate about having to wait and having technical difficulties is that we got to get to our good friend Brett Ciancia, who does a really good job. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to call Brett Ciancia. Stay tuned with us. Stay here. Okay, because we're going to talk some football. We're going to talk why LSU is probably going to win the SEC West, even though we have some Rudy Poos that are saying fire Ed Orgeron. So let's do this. We're going to call Brett. We're going to come back. We're going to keep talking about this. All right, so let's do that now. Guys, I'm telling you, I'm tired of talking about it. Like, I'm legitimately tired of talking about it. But we got to get to Brett Ciancia because he's a great. Brett.
Hey, Blake, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
Good, man. We are live. Just wanted to let you know out the gate. Sorry we're a little late. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but Brett Ciancia from Pick Six Previews is our guest. Brett, how are you doing tonight, man? We're so close to the football season. How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, well, I'm doing great. Once the confetti drops in January on the national title stage, I begin prep for my next year's book, and it was a full 7-year journey, 7-year grind, or sorry, 7-month grind. And here we are. Hey, I'm exhausted. It's been a big week, but we got it released here on Saturday. It's my 10th annual edition. Those first 9 years are graded the most accurate in the country, beating all the ones you see on newsstands, all the ones online in terms of Power 5 predictions. So here we are, all the work's in, all the writing's done, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. Now, Brett, when I've gotten a lot of your stuff. You sent it to me today, and I got to be honest, I was blown away by the work and the stuff that you do, especially tonight. What we'll focus on is the SEC. Maybe we'll focus on some stuff on a later show. But, Brett, I got to be honest, the deep dive that you did into the SEC was absolutely phenomenal. So let's start in the SEC East because I want to talk some LSU, so we'll go to the West last. Brett, it seems like Georgia is starting to pull away from some people and what they believe, and a lot of people believe that Georgia is going to win the East. JT Daniels, Kirby Smart, can he open that offense up? What do you say? What does Brett Ciancia at Pick Six Previews think about Georgia, and are they the clear favorite to win the SEC East?
Yeah, they're the clear SEC East favorite, but also I think they're a playoff caliber team. They're a pick for me to make the playoff this year. Beating Alabama in Atlanta is my prediction. So what you have here with Georgia, of course, everyone blames them for not, making the playoff year in and year out with the best roster. And that might be true, but this time around, they have the modern offense that they need to make the next step. With Todd Monken in his second year there as their coordinator, they got all that efficiency gain. And you get JT Daniels back after a great close to the season. Remember, people forget he wasn't the starter the first half of the year. They struggled out of the gates with no preseason to install this scheme. Once he took over midway through the year, they played incredible offensive football. They're going to always have the defense to pair with it. I think they're a complete team, 5 stars everywhere, the number 1 recruiting roster in America. And I think that they now have the offensive scheme to convert it to a playoff.
I agree with that, and I think that, like you mentioned, I mean, the one thing that I would say, Brett, and maybe you would agree with this, is their secondary doesn't have a lot of depth, so if they have some injuries there could be a problem. But I do think that in the front seven, on defense especially, they do have the guys that can get them there. JT Daniels is interesting, and can this offense open up? Brett, the question, though, is since we do believe that Georgia is the top of the SEC East, I mean, can a Florida compete with them? Can Kentucky or Missouri with Connor Bazelak and Eli Drinkwitz? Are they that far ahead and separating themselves, or do you think Georgia could slip up in the regular season in the SEC and find one of these teams beating them when they're not supposed to?
Well, with Georgia, of course, they open with Clemson, so that's a heavyweight bout right away. I mean, that's almost a coin flip game, quite honestly, maybe a 60-40. So that'll be tough right out of the gates. The SEC, like we saw last year, it's a gauntlet. I mean, there's no easy week. So yeah, they might trip up somewhere and still make it in as a 1-loss conference champ. But have they separated from Florida? I think so. With Florida to close that gap or to win the East again to defend their title, they need 2 big things to happen. One is a big offensive reload. They got to reload from their obviously Kyle Trask, Pitts, and Tony. A lot of first-round firepower there. So they need a massive reload on offense. And secondly, they got to revamp that defense. Over the last decade, that was one of the main constants in college football was that Florida would have a top 10 defense, all these draft picks and Florida's speed. It fell flat last year, and it's hard to understand why. There's 5 stars everywhere. Now, the good thing for Todd Grantham is he gets another chance this year, gets all those guys back. So a lot of returning production on defense. So yeah, they need 2 big ifs, an offensive reload and a defensive rebuild. We'll see.
Brett, one team that I'm kind of high on, and myself, I always look at sleepers, and one team in the East that I'm looking at, and especially because I think that they have a good quarterback in Connor Bazelak, is Missouri. Do you think that Missouri could be a team in the East that could surprise some people? Missouri, from an SEC standpoint, not necessarily a laughingstock, Brett, because they came to the SEC and they really dominated, getting into the SEC East, winning the SEC East and getting into the title game a couple of times with Chase Daniels. But do you think that Connor Bazelak and Eli Drinkwitz can find a way to find themselves at 2, 3, or 4 at the end of the season in the East?
Yeah, so I have Missouri fourth in the East. There's a lot to like there, but also some question marks. When you look at their 5-5 campaign last year, that might look good on paper considering it was a 10-game SEC slate. 5-5, some signature wins in there was nice. But when you dig a little bit deeper, their average margin of victory, when you throw out the Alabama and the Vandy's, the extremes on both sides, the middle 8 games, they only won by 5 points per game. They lost by 25 points per game. So
Nice.
they screeched by some close wins, got blown out in the others. I think that they were a little bit weaker than that record shows. They ended up only 9th in my game grader formula last year in the SEC. So a more proven commodity to me in the SEC East is Kentucky. What Mark Stoops has built there and continues to build a strong offensive line, one of the nation's best, again, with some potential first rounders. And they landed, of course, you guys know, Rosenthal over there.
Right.
So they reloaded on their offensive line, a strong defense year in and year out. And if they can even just improve their passing game a little bit, I mean, remember, they have no threat in the pass game the last couple of years. If they can even get that up to speed a little bit, I have Kentucky going third in the SEC East.
I can easily see that because, Brett, I think that just up front, they're going to dominate a lot of teams. I mean, look, being a former collegiate O-lineman, I think that they're going to try to get the ball down the field. But, look, if sometimes that doesn't work, they're definitely going to go back to their bread and butter. Brett Ciancia, Pick Six Previews, pick6previews.com will let you know everywhere that you can get all of his stuff at the end. Brett, we do have a fan question here, and it's from Nookie. He says, #Ask Brett, do you trust Kirby to stick with the new offense, quote unquote, in a tight game, or will he channel his inner Les Miles, as some of these Bayou people are saying? Will he channel his inner Les Miles, and do you think he'll get back to conservative or being conservative?
Well, I think the hiring itself says it all. I think by making that monumental shift from what I used to call the 1980s offense, what they were running in the early part of the Kirby Smart era, to make that shift over to Todd Monken, I think that meant a lot. That shows he's ready to accept a change in the SEC and in college football, similar to what Alabama did, bringing in Lane Kiffin 3 years ago, and similar to what LSU did, bringing in Joe Brady. I think that Smart realized that, hey, to take the next step and really unlock that 5-star potential on his roster, they got to open up the playbook. So I think they're going to stick with it, especially given the proof of concept that we saw over the back half of the season. Like I said, with JT Daniels taking over full time, the stats say so, the numbers, the analytics, but more so if you watch them on tape, a lot more vertical shots they were taking and they were hitting on them. Of course, they have 5-star talent on the outside. So no, I think that move said it all, and they're ready to gamble with that offense.
Yeah, and look, I hope for their sake they keep just having it open, Brett, and don't go back conservative, because we saw, like you mentioned, what Joe Brady and LSU did in 2019. Let's move over to the West, and I think this is where we're going to spend a lot of our time, Brett. I want to go here with you and get your opinion on this. LSU in the SEC West returns more production on offense and defense than any team in the SEC or in the West Division. But Alabama is dead last in returning production, and so is Texas A&M when it comes to an offensive standpoint. Brett, in your opinion, does it worry you that, maybe outside of Saban, because I get it, but does it worry you when a team in general has so much to replace when you're doing your evaluations for the following season?
Oh, absolutely. It goes a long way. But I think you need to take it with a grain of salt. You need to really put in what coaching staff you're talking about, what the recruiting profile is, who these new guys are going to be. So in Alabama's case, for example, they lose a ton on offense. They lose 3 Heisman candidates. Obviously, their offensive coordinator's gone, 2 All-American linemen, and a bunch of other defenders are gone. But all right, so who's going to replace them? They're the number 2 recruiting roster in America over the last 5 years. It's usually the number 1 class. I mean, they're talking about firepower. The rich get richer, whatever expression you want to throw at it. They have the talent there. And how's the staff going to do with it? Well, who has a more proven record than Saban's staff? So they excel with player development and win conversion, all my metrics. You see it on draft day, you see it on signing day. So on that, with that said, that's why I do have Alabama outside the playoff, because there is such a massive reload there. There's a little bit more question marks than usual. I think it's still enough and strong enough to win the division, albeit a very crowded and talented division. I think this is the best division in college football. When you look at A&M, they're still in my top 10. And LSU, I have them 11th nationally. So to the LSU fans listening, I have you 3rd in the West, but 11th overall in the whole nation. It says a lot about the kind of gauntlet you have to face in the SEC West. So, and then I have Ole Miss fourth and still in the top 20. So it's a
Right.
very difficult division. A lot to like from LSU. I said this too. I said this on other shows. I hope everyone got their jokes in on LSU last year, all their punchlines, all their tweets, because that was the ultimate transition year. It's all, it's all going to turn tables now and all pay dividends here in 2021. This team is flying under the radar.
Brett, I'm going to agree with you, and we're going to save LSU for last on purpose. Brett, do you think that this is a year that the SEC could get two teams in the playoff? I mean, look, it hasn't been – we've seen it once, but it was, Alabama and Georgia, two teams from opposite divisions in the same conference but opposite divisions. Could we see a scenario, since the SEC West is so just heavy, that we see two of those teams get into the playoff this year?
Well, it's certainly possible. They're the only conference to have pulled it off. I'm not even going to count that Notre Dame Clemson thing. That's not, Notre Dame's not a member. That's not going to be a repeat there. So, it's certainly possible. Now, the main issue with this is, do two other Power 5 conferences produce multi-loss teams? So
Right.
It's kind of a tough thing. We haven't seen that yet. So you kind of need the Pac-12 to beat itself up, which that does usually happen. But that also means you need the ACC or the Big 12 or the Big 10 to also do that. So if you're looking for a conference to maybe knock itself out, the Big 12 is very crowded at the top. I do have Oklahoma in my playoff bracket this year. I didn't have them last year correctly. But I do this year. It's crowded, though. Iowa State's top 10 caliber. I have TCU in my top 10 also. A lot of great teams out there. But you need chaos for that to happen. And if chaos does happen, then the SEC gets the first bid on getting two in. They get the first, the first try at it.
Brett, because of the interesting, and this is where I was going with this, is that you do have Alabama, A&M, and LSU. Now, I'm not as high as some on A&M because I do think that they got a lot to replace. They got a lot of good skill players offensively, and they got some guys up front defensively that I think that can do some stuff. But in the separation, I think you said A&M's right there with LSU. Do you see that game being more of a coin flip game at the end of the season to possibly, in your scenario, being second in the SEC West, or do you think that A&M does have a slight edge above LSU right now currently?
Yeah, I mean, a slight edge just because we saw it happen. We saw it come to fruition last year with their defense. While I think that LSU will make a massive jump on both sides of the ball, with A&M, we know what we have with their defense, and it's a top 10 caliber unit in the country, 9 starters back. A&M, you mentioned their skill, offensive skill positions. They're loaded there, just like LSU is. Really, the question mark is quarterback. They're a quarterback away. If they hit a home run with this Haynes King guy, this new freshman quarterback dual threat, if they hit a homer there, A&M is a possible playoff team. They really are. It's that close. Kellen Mond, he brought stability to the position. Was efficient the whole bit, but he didn't really win them games. If they have a guy that can go win them games with Haynes King, then look out. But I like what we have on the defense. It's proven. Does that LSU game at the end determine second place? We'll see. A lot of it has to do with the cross division where LSU draws Florida. That's a tough one every year in and year out, while A&M gets kind of a scheduled boost by avoiding the top 2 on that side. So. Right. Everything factors in. It is in Death Valley. You do have the huge home field advantage, which, hey, that matters again in 2021. I'm excited. I think it's the most anticipated season in all of our lifetimes, given that, tailgates are back and games are on campus and full again. So, yeah, the Death Valley is going to be rocking there on November 27th.
Well, Brett, we'll definitely get you down here, man. If you haven't experienced Death Valley, we're going to, especially at night, Brett. You can't come during the day game when we're hungover, right? Like, we're going to have to get you down here for Death Valley at a night game, 7 o'clock for sure. Brett, now I want to get into LSU because there are some question marks, right? Like Max Johnson, Miles Brennan, they do return a lot of their entire offensive line besides Darrell Rosenthal, who you mentioned and what we've mentioned before now at Kentucky. They bring in a whole new staff. They bring in a lot of new, younger coaches. Brett, when you see LSU and you see the production of what they're bringing back, do you think, in your opinion, that they, at the end of the year, you could see them have a big surge and possibly win the West? Or do you think that they're possibly a year away from winning the West again?
They're definitely in contention, and no one else is really giving them credit for this. They need a lot of little things to click, but there's definitely a path there to a West title. First from the top, I like the coordinator changes. I think that was kind of a whiff that Orgeron had last year, especially on defense with Pelini. I like what he's done with both coordinator hires and co-coordinators. Going back to what worked here in 2019 with the Joe Brady system, bringing in two guys, Pete and Mangus, that worked alongside him last year, Joe Brady. So returning to what worked on defense, Durante Jones, but also with Blake Baker, it's almost like a 2-for-1 package deal.
Right.
I love what Blake Baker did at Miami. He was a part of those aggressive defenses. They were always number one in my negative play rate, which shows how frequently a team is in the backfield disrupting plays, sacks, tackles for loss. So if they bring that aggressive attitude, there's definitely the players here to do it. A very deep defensive line. So when I was going through this team in my research, every single position group stood out as being loaded with talent. There's just so much talent at LSU. It's just ready to click. Returning production is a pretty strong indicator of the next year taking a big step. So the formula is definitely there. And then your eyes go to quarterback. But I like what they have with Johnson. He really showed some great moments towards the end of the year. I think he's a better fit for what they want to do with the RPO game. He already beat out, I think it was Finley who transferred out.
Right.
And I think he's going to surpass Brennan when that becomes a battle in fall camp. So I like Johnson there. And I think that it's a complete team. Blue chippers everywhere, experience everywhere. And now if these coordinator hires hit, then LSU is right back in the mix.
Brett, last question. I'll get you out of here. You've been phenomenal as always. Not just talking about the SEC, but let's talk about all of college football. Do you think that this could be potentially the best year in college football from just a depth perspective, Brett? Because you look around, they're calling them super seniors now. All these guys that return. Do you think that this is the deepest in all the Power 5 conferences that we've seen? I don't want to say maybe ever, but I kind of feel like because you had so many guys back, do you see this as the best from a depth perspective, best college football season that we've ever had?
Yeah, I know that's a big claim to make, but when you think about it, it's true because all of these guys took their bonus years. It's the most veteran rosters we've ever seen on a macro level, across the whole sport. I think Brad Powers put out a tweet looking at the returning starters on offensive lines, where usually only a handful would return all 5 linemen. But
Right.
This year it was like 30 or 40 teams or something, like so many teams. And that's one position group that, think of that across the whole roster. So I remember back in January when I started doing my initial research, the first couple of teams I looked at, it was like UCLA or somebody out west, and they had 21 starters back. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a super team. What's going on? And then I started to, as I dug into more teams, that became kind of the common thing where, 15, 17 starters is about average this year compared to the usual 11 or 12. So, very veteran. And now these guys have had a full off season to learn too. I remember 2020, they had no spring ball, very shortened fall camp, and coordinator changes were impossible to implement anything over Zoom. I talked to a couple of coordinators that, they said it was a nightmare trying to teach fundamentals and scheme over Zoom. You can imagine how ridiculous that is.
Right.
I think given the full off season, the return of all these veterans. Now, the other wild card though in this is that it's unprecedented with the transfer portal. The player movement has been out of control. And, as a one-man operation here, you can imagine how many times I had to delete whole paragraphs out of when a guy, changes schools in the last second. So Rosenthal being an example with LSU, I had the whole,
Right.
all 5 starters back up front, the whole unit's intact, everything. And then he, for whatever reason, off the field. But I think definitely the deepest pool of teams, you're going to see teams that you normally don't contend, like an Iowa State is going to be a solid top 10 team. TCU, Utah's in the mix over there in the Pac-12. I like UNC, the Tar Heels, usually a basketball school, but I like them to come out of the ACC even. So, we're in for the most anticipated year in our lifetime, I think.
Brett Ciancia, guys, I'm telling you, you have to go follow him on Twitter, pick6previews.com. Go get all of his content. Brett, tell everybody where they can get all of your great stuff and where they can follow you and everything that you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Blake, again for having me. It's pick6previews.com and at pick6previews on Twitter. And again, it's an annual season preview book, all 66 Power 5 teams. I try and strike the balance between numbers. I have all my analytics there on the page on the left side, but then putting it back into readable terms. So a balance of numbers, film study, of spring games, of calls with coaches, calls with coordinators, program histories, recruiting trends, the whole bit. So I think it's an all-encompassing view on all 66 of these teams. And it's a digital download too. And it allowed me to the freedom to get it as up to date as possible. While these other ones were on newsstands back in April and May, so much of these rosters have shifted the last month or two, and it's all up to date right now. So it's pick6previews.com.
Brett, phenomenal. 10th year Pick Six Previews. No better place to be and to get all the great content. Brett, thank you so much, my friend. We'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Blake. Keep up the great work, man. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, man. That's Brett Ciancia from Pick Six Previews. Guys, I'm telling you, the breakdown from Brett Ciancia at Pick Six Previews, you're not going to find it anywhere else. Like, I'm sitting here looking at it, and for example, like the LSU stuff, guys, it's detailed, it's layered. He gives you reasons why. Now, look, he has LSU third in the SEC West. I don't agree with that, but look, there's nobody more detailed. I promise you that. And Brett's coming from an unbiased position. In his opinion, he doesn't care about Bama or anything anywhere else. He does a great job, and I'm glad that he came on. All right. So I've seen a lot of comments in here. If you missed the earlier part of the show, let me do this very quickly. I got to give a shout out to our good friend John Patton over at GMFS Mortgage. Guys, if you're buying a new home, saving money in the mortgage that you have now, or even doing a cash out refi, the timing's never been better. Get in touch with him. Richie Roche from Roche's Lawn and Landscape, 225-937-7220. That's 225-937-7220. And our good friends over at the Drake Williams Law Firm, drakewilliamslawfirm.com, 985-386-7600. That's 985-386-7600 for all of your real estate and succession needs, anything you need, DWIs, whatever happens, they will get in touch with you. Get in touch with them today, and they will help you out. So let's do this. If you missed it, I'm seeing a lot of comments in reference to the opening part of the show. Matt Angelo, good friend of mine, about Matt, the whole thing with Matt Moscona. Guys, this whole ordeal, this whole shit of naming Ed Orgeron and listing Ed Orgeron as Joe Paterno, guys, it's not that in the same boat. It's not even in the same stratosphere, right? Like, it's not even close. We're talking about children, y'all. Multitudes of years, right? So the simple fact, hold on, that's even a narrative, like that's even close to being a narrative, I don't understand it. If you missed it, I'll just reiterate. Chuck Oliver, big sports show, King of College Football out in Atlanta, had on Matt Moscona this week, SEC Media Days. He compared Art Briles, Joe Paterno, and Ed Orgeron as one. It's not close. I mean, guys, remember the Baylor stuff. Remember the Jerry Sandusky stuff. That was nonstop. That was news every single day. Guys, let me just reiterate this for people who don't understand. The NCAA is on LSU's campus looking for reasons to get people out of there. What do you think happened with James Craig? Like, do you think that all of a sudden LSU just let him go like that? Come on, man. Come on. And they're not finding anything. You do a Hush Blackwell report. Ed Orgeron comes out not completely smelling like a rose, but didn't do anything wrong. I mean, guys, Ed has kicked players off. Arden Key being one of the biggest ones for smoking dope. And the only reason I say it like that is because Arden's talked about it. He's even talked about him going to rehab. So it's not something that we don't already know. So the simple fact that we're saying that he would cover this stuff up is from a player that he recruited, and Arden Key. It blows my mind how we can just sit here and act. And you know what? What's going to happen is I'm already getting the DMs now, and I already see them, and this is fine. But, people that like Matt, which, again, like I said in the beginning, don't think he's a horrible dude. I just think that what he's doing is, I don't even know the right vocabulary word for it, maybe other than just reckless. Maybe it's a good way to term this. Like, guys, this is reckless. Very reckless. Not only is it reckless, it's like, everybody, I'll give this example. It's like when people talk about the LSU, the weed policy. Have you ever read the LSU weed policy? We talk about it so much. Do you know it? Have you read it? Have you researched it? I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of people that said they read the Hush Blackwell report, the 1,400-page Hush Blackwell report. You didn't read no 1,400 pages. Ain't nobody read no 1,400 pages. So, C. King says they're so stupid. Who will replace Coach O with? Coach O is doing good for LSU. Dorian says, preach on, brother. Amanda says, Moscona reminds me of Glenn Gilbo. He does have those tendencies. TJ says, happy late B-Day gift. Keep up the great work, Blake. Love the show. Thank you very much. So let's get to a couple of these comments here. But I just don't, for the life of me, I don't understand. Kirk says, so why is O listed as defendant? What's up with that? Guys, there's a lot of people that get sued. The player stated. So what Kirk's asking about is why is Ed Orgeron in the civil suit? It's because the individual, the lady in question, who said this about Darius Guys, who, by the way, didn't file a criminal report in any of this. The only thing that Ed Orgeron is in this lawsuit for is that a player told Ed Orgeron this happened. And here's another question that I've asked, and nobody has this answer for me. When did they say that this happened? Because in 2016, there was a guy by the name of Les Miles who was still the head coach. And Ed vividly denies that he ever had a conversation about that actually happening. He does say that he talked to him about it, but it had nothing to do with stuff like that. Nothing. So you have imagine this. I'm assuming that everybody in here has a job. And I'm assuming everybody goes to their jobs on a regular basis. I would assume. I don't know. But so if you do, follow me here. What if somebody makes up a story about you and we don't have proof, but you have so many people on Twitter, you have people going on the radio saying that you need to be fired, even though it may or may not be true? Coaches and players are the only place in America, if you really think about it, coaches and players are the only place in America that we do things like this. We say to fire them. Maybe you do it sometimes in work, but it's not like we do in head coaching jobs. Players, we talk about the money that they make. You know, the funny thing to me is like, what if a guy, what if John Doe signs with State Farm Insurance? This is not a paid advertisement for State Farm. But what if he goes to State Farm Insurance and we go in there and we find out he makes $160,000 a year, and people are dissecting, well, John Doe shouldn't have made $160,000 at State Farm. He's not worth it. Or what a steal. Like, we don't do. What if somebody dug into your personal life? It's the only place in America where we sit here and we go through so much of people's personal lives, money. And you ask the question of why players and coaches act the way that they do. It's because you're constantly digging in their lives. That's the God's honest truth. We have to be a little bit better as individuals before we say fire so-and-so. If production's one thing, that is one thing. But when you're making an allegation and something this serious, you better come with more than he said, she said. And I'm going to use Kirk because we're friends. Kirk says, so why is O listed as a defendant? I'm going to use this as a scenario. Most people haven't read it. They see the headlines. They read the headlines. They hear what they hear on radio. But what they do not do is go and research it. What is going to get the clicks? What is going to get the clicks? That's all that this shit winds up being. Ed Orgeron is not Joe Paterno, nor did he cover up child molestation for, 13 years? For the love of Christ. Cy Tate says, love listening to you on my hour-long drive to work, man. Best guy to talk about LSU sports right now. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Denzel says, where do we draw the line between protecting the player and reporting information to authorities, especially when the player isn't being completely honest with you? From what I have read, the player told O it was a relationship issue. See, and that's the point. Like, that's the point. Also, in the documentation that we've seen so far is that the kid, the former player, contradicted his story. Now, I haven't been out here beating that over the head. But there are documents that the former player who said that he had this conversation with Ed Orgeron stated multiple times, different accounts of when it happened. He talked about where it happened. It was different two different times. Then he reiterated, well, I misspoke. And look, that happens. And I understand that. But you got to start asking questions. Roger says George is overrated. Look, I'm going to be dead honest with you guys on this one, and my buddy Paul's going to get on to me about that. I'm in the boat. I think they're going to win I think they're going to – guys, I don't know if it's not a coin flip against Clemson. Look at all the kids defensively that transferred from Clemson and are on other teams. Mike Jones comes to mind. There's so many players defensively that have transferred out of Clemson. Look, DJ Uiagalelei is a good quarterback. We saw what he did against Notre Dame, but we'll have to wait to see if he's able to bring them back into the promised land. And look, Georgia defensively in their front seven is going to be nasty. I'm just telling you, they're going to be nasty. I don't know if I'm going to go that they're overrated. The flip side of that, though, is that I don't trust Kirby Smart enough to say that he'll win a national title or an SEC. I still think a team out of the West is going to win it. Like I fully believe that they're going to win. And the only time that Georgia won the SEC in the SEC championship game, if you remember, was a rematch against a 2-loss Auburn team that wound up the final a month from then going and losing to UCF. I don't know about that one, guys. So I it's the kind of thing that people say about LSU. Why can't it be flipped for Georgia? I got to see it to believe it. I got to see Georgia going out there start whipping that ass. I think JT Daniels is a damn good quarterback, but I got to see it. Like, I got to see it happen. Eric says that LSU has 5 stars everywhere. Don't forget that part. Yeah, they do. 4 and 5 stars everywhere. I don't have the faith. Brett Ciancia likes Texas A&M a lot. I am not in that boat. Like, I'm not in that boat at all. I think that they're replacing a lot of things on the offensive line. It's going to be a big concern for LSU next season, right? They're replacing a lot of pieces on the defensive line. Kenyon Green, who's going to play tackle at Texas A&M, was a one-time LSU commit. I think that he's going to be a good tackle. Outside of that, I don't have any faith whatsoever that Hayes King, who I believe at A&M is going to be the quarterback, I have no faith whatsoever in Texas A&M. If you ask me, and I was going to put this out next week, but I'll just say it now. Mine is going to be the Alabama LSU 1-2. Like, I think it's going to be a coin flip in the first week of November. I got Ole Miss at 3, guys. That Ole Miss scares the bejesus out of me. They're going to score a lot of points with Matt Corral and Lane Kiffin in year 2 of Lane Kiffin. They're going to score a lot of points, man. So if you can score points, you can upset teams. Texas A&M showed last season, even under Jimbo Fisher and a 5th-year senior at quarterback, that they can't – I mean, look, let's call it what it is. They couldn't score against LSU, really, with the worst defense that LSU's had in 20 years. Guys, they scored 20 points, and LSU was unable to move the football. And you're telling me that team's going to score a lot of points? Now, Hayes King, what do we have there? I don't know. Nobody knows. What I do think that Brett Ciancia is right about on Texas A&M is if they hit on if Hayes King hits and he's a good quarterback, it's going to be a battle. And look, Alabama replacing look, they're dead last in the SEC in production returning. Everybody says Saban, and I get it. And look, you can't doubt Saban, right? Like, you cannot doubt Nick Saban. I understand that. What I also am going to say is, look, it's the last time that Nick Saban had to replace this many pieces, they didn't even make the playoff. It's not as simple as plug and play sometimes. What does Bryce Young do? So we'll see. Irish Bill, big Notre Dame fan down in the Emerald Coast, says they need a hashtag stay off the weed. I agree with that one. Scotty says, talking about Moscona, or however you spell his name, I don't know what that means. Tommy says the person who wrote the Hush Blackwell report hasn't read that report. It's true. That's true. Guys, it's 1,400 pages. It took an entire law firm to put that together over 6 months. One man's going to read it in a week. That shit did not happen. They took highlights out of it. Come on, man. Come on. Matthew says, you know that people are looking for an easy payment. Certainly seems what Gloria Scott was looking for. I don't mean that in the wrong way, but guys, here's a crazy thing that nobody's talking about, right? That nobody seems to fathom. And I've not heard anybody. I have not heard anybody talk about this. We have outside of myself, we have audio from Gloria Scott, the security guard at the Superdome, say the following words. I've said this many times. I spoke with Sharon Lewis. Now, if you're asking yourself who is Sharon Lewis is the individual who worked for LSU, was inside that department, that worked there every day, Les Miles and Ed Orgeron. It's funny that she mentions Les Miles in her civil suit, but not Ed Orgeron. What should that part tell you? Sharon Lewis, who's suing LSU. Think about this. She's suing LSU for $50 million, and Ed Orgeron wasn't in her lawsuit. But we have audio from Gloria Scott saying that I spoke with Sharon Lewis, and now Miss Gloria, referring to herself in the third person, now Miss Gloria wants her money. Ladies and gentlemen, that is extortion. That is extortion. That is a crime. So where we talk about media, where do we draw the line there? You want to talk about drawing the line. So what, we can believe one thing but not the other. So we can believe other people but not Ed Orgeron. We can believe other people. We're supposed to believe the media. Guys, I'm going to tell you right now, on some of this, I don't believe it. Then when I don't believe it, then I got to go research it. And it's something that we all should be doing across everything. Loose lips will sink ships. As Ryan Thibodeau sends us $5, he said, with name, image, and likeness, could these allegations, quote unquote, become more civil than criminal? They all will. I mean, look at the NFL. I mean, with all due respect to Richard Sherman, and I'm not going to get into that, but look at Richard Sherman. They said that he broke into the house and started throwing punches, but we have video surveillance saying that he didn't. I mean, guys, come on that one, right? Due process. Aaron C. King says the local media outside of AYS makes Coach O's job much harder. Thank you. And look, don't think that I'm not throwing. Let me say this too. Don't act like I ain't throwing a hissy fit saying what the hell's going on. Come on. Aaron Adams says your show is always on point, Blake. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Mario says Coach Smart chokes every year. You can't, what's funny about that? He ain't lying. He ain't lying. He ain't lying. Brant says, what am I going to say? I've seen so much about this. What happened? Look, Brant, just go to the beginning or of our show and listen to it. We've just talked about it. I've given the scenario a couple of times. So just not to continue to repeat myself and the people that have already been listening, I just ask you if you just go back to the beginning of the show. C. King says, I'm not buying what Kirby's selling. Paul says, but Kiffin isn't eating until he gets a defense. Well, if Kiffin ain't eating, he going to be skinny as hell, boy. Man. Look, about Ole Miss, to me, they scare me more than anybody in the West. I'm serious. I get the Alabama thing, but we kind of already know what we're going to get with Alabama. You're going to get regardless how much you like Alabama, hate them, love them, whatever you like or whatever you want, you're going to get a good game from them. You're going to get your best. And most times you're going to get their best. With that being said, there's a reason that Saban's only repeated once. It's hard to win a national title, as some people from SB Nation that follow LSU call LSU a second-tier team. Okay. You listen to the podcast, I'm giving a gesture. But Ole Miss is a team that it's going to be able to score in bunches, y'all. They're going to be able to score in bunches, and that is scary as hell. Guys, if you can score 35, 40 points, you're going to win a shit ton of games. But their defense is going to give up a lot too. Their defense is going to – I can easily see Ole Miss being 8-4, 9-3. I'm that high on them. And look, I could be dead ass wrong, but I have a lot of faith in Kiffin in this offense. I really do. Guys, look at their running backs. Look at their receivers. Look at their quarterback. Look at their O-line. They got some dogs out there now. Like Ole Miss homer. No, I'm not. I'm just going to call a spade a spade. Let's see. Brandon on Facebook says, I hear you, man, but they do have a really good quarterback this season and a good defense, plus the East is terrible. Talking about Georgia. I agree with that, man. I agree. I agree with that. Y'all going to call me crazy? I think that it's a coin flip game versus Clemson and Georgia. But look, Kirby can be, he is what he is. He can be the Les Miles of this stuff. But let's not act like Les didn't win a lot of football games now. Let's not act like Les didn't win a lot of football games. He did, man. He did. As shitty as that man is and as stupid as that man was, I mean, he won a lot of football games. Paul Batts, our friend, what's up, Paul? He says, historically, the best season is to give Bama a L in this type of season. A lot of turnover, including key members of the staff, plus O'Brien and Saban will clash. Yeah, I mean, and look, they don't normally repeat. It's hard, guys. Again, it's hard to win a natty. It's hard to win that son of a bitch twice. And I see this about Peggy talking about Gilbert. But she says Gilbert was average at LSU. Did y'all see? I'm going to go different with this one. Did y'all see Kirby's comments about Eric Gilbert today? Well, we thought he was going back to LSU. Bruh, I ain't trying to call my ass Nostradamus, but I told y'all that shit was going on, and Kirby believed it too. We didn't talk to him. We didn't talk to him. Kirby, Matt Trent from WBRZ, who we have on the show, dude, the questions Matt Trent's asking is just amazing. But, bro, don't be lying. This man had the audacity to say that he wasn't worried about Eric Gilbert, but you brought him into your team? Kirby. TJ says 5 interceptions against our worst team, talking about Matt Corral and Ole Miss. This year our O will score points. Well, they did against Ole Miss. And look, again, what's funny about that is everybody talked about, bitched at me about, there goes my dog, somebody's outside. But everybody bitched at me about some stuff, but about, our secondary, but still. All right, a couple more. We're going to get on out of here. Cedric says, what's up, Blake? Good to see you back. Thank you, sir. Father Aber says, I won't start being too concerned with Ole Miss. LSU has the worst defense last year and still outscored them. Look, I agree with that. They're going to give up a lot of points. But here's the thing right here. You see this comment from TJ. He says 5 interceptions. Guys, that's not going to happen often. It's not often you get 5 interceptions from a quarterback in a game. And Matt Corral is going to be better. So, last one. Peggy Red says, Kirby talked about stealing a good player when you can. Talking about Gilbert, yeah. That dude, bro. I lied. Scotty says Matt Moscona spends most of his podcast reading his comments and talking about other crap than discussing LSU. Yeah, most people, and I don't mean this from Matt, but most people do that when they don't know X's and O's football. RMN LDR on YouTube says Durante Jones will be better than Aranda was. That's some high praise right there, man. Some high praise. We'll see. All right, guys, we will see y'all again tomorrow. Sean Merriman, former NFL Charger, NFL guy, great guy. He's supposed to be stopping by. We'll see if we can grab some time with Sean tomorrow. It's going to be really fun. Let's go watch NBA Game 6s. It's on now. Let's go Bucks. Why did I say let's go Bucks? Like I really care. But I love Drew Holiday, so I'm going to say let's go Bucks. All right, guys, we'll see y'all again soon. Have a good night.